I'm watching the 2020 All-Star race on Fox, and I figured I might as well open up a box of cards and make a little video. I'm going to open up this one and not this one. They're both 1992 Traks. They have the possibility of getting a certified autograph card inside the packs, which that was the first time NASCAR cards had an autograph card inserted. And they were pretty spectacular because it was Jeff Gordon's first certified autograph wearing his Baby Ruth uniform. And there was also the coveted Dale Earnhardt Sr. Richard Petty dual autograph card. On the packs and the boxes, it states that there are, well, I guess it's, yeah. All right, so, yeah. So, right. 9 racing personalities from Traks 200 card set have been selected to sign special autograph series cards. These personalities have all signed a maximum of 5,000 cards each, and they're randomly inserted. So they don't state exactly how often those were inserted or how many were actually signed of each. They just say there's a maximum of 5,000 of each driver. And I used to open these packs and boxes all the time in the 90s, and I was never able to pull an autograph card out of a pack. I've purchased the autographs many times, but just never was able to pull one. The 94 Traks, which they didn't do autographs in 93, but they did in 94, those were one roughly every box to 2 boxes, and I pulled plenty out of there. I'm opening this box, but not this one. And the reason is because, let me see if you can tell the difference. I'll give you a second. So this is what I remember the boxes and the factory seal look like back in the 90s. It has Traks, and then it says factory sealed right there. And it's all around the shrink wrapping. But when I got these boxes from eBay, it just says factory sealed. It looks similar, it's roughly the same size, but it doesn't have the Traks logo. Now, as far as I know, that is not how they were ever shipped from the factory. So I talked to the seller, and he took care of me, and I was able to keep some of the boxes so I can open them. So this is just for fun. I don't think there's going to be an autograph in here because the reason that these may have been rewrapped, if this in fact is not a true factory seal from Traks, is because people were looking for the autograph cards. So that being said, I'm just gonna hang out here, watch the All-Star race, and open up a box. My alarm went off, so I had to restart. $12 cards a pack. There's 30 packs in a box. 3 stacks of 10. Foil pack. And look for special autograph series cards. See back for details. There's a possibility that you could, send in a letter and possibly win a whole set. It would have been great if they would have gotten Alan Quickie and Davey Allison, because if you're a NASCAR fan, you know that in 1992, this is one of the most profound years in NASCAR history, with the two of them dueling it out for the championship with Bill Elliott and Harry Gant, with it coming down to the last race in Atlanta, Alan Quickie eventually winning, Davey Allison having a heartbreak accident with the person that would oddly enough take over his car the following year after he passed away. Anyway, we're going to be chasing any of the autograph cards out of this series. If we get one, I'm going to be extremely surprised. And if we do get one, I don't know what that says about this factory seal. Please excuse my finger. I cut my finger maybe like a week ago, and it's still healing. There we go, Bobby Labonte, Flying Aces. Dale Earnhardt's crew, that's Strickland. And these were fairly large sets as well. I believe they were like 200 or 300 cards. Very classic imagery of the NASCAR drivers from the most popular era in NASCAR, which was the 90s. Arguably, people will say that, the early 2000s was just as popular, and it was extremely popular, but there was just something really special about this group of drivers and the storylines that happened throughout the late 80s, early 90s. Alan Kulwicki, the 1992 champion. And these cards were hard to get in great condition. They were often beaten up, dinged, scratched, because NASCAR cards back then weren't necessarily handled all that well, which is good for the collector today, because if you get a PSA graded version 10, they're still not worth what a PSA 10 would be for, say, like a Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan card. That goes without saying, or even Ken Griffey Jr. But the condition sensitivity of the cards makes a perfect example fairly sought after. That was bananas. Sterling Marlin crashed, and his car went up in flames, and I think it was caused by a jack stand that was in his trunk from a previous issue. And back in the day, they would do all kinds of crew photos and personality photos, which was really great. And it actually, looking back at it, made me fall in love with photography. Dale Jarrett. This was the first year Dale Jarrett racing with Joe Gibbs. I recommend, Dale Earnhardt. That's a fantastic card, off center, as you can see. I recommend watching the Dale Jr. download and listening to the Dale Jarrett, listening to every single one of those episodes, but they have over 300 at this point. But listening to the Dale Jarrett episode as well as the Joe Gibbs episode is really interesting, because they rented their cars from Hendrix, their engines from Hendrix. It was basically like a loaner team. And then now, fast forward 28 years later, Joe Gibbs Racing is arguably the most dominant, along with Hendrick, the most dominant racing program that exists. And not just in NASCAR, but I would say that the majority of the racing series would identify Joe Gibbs as being a powerhouse. Cale Yarborough, Robert Yates, Kyle Petty. That is such a... These are classic Dale Earnhardt Sr. poses, and the centering on that one looks really great. It might be off-center just a little bit, leaning closer to the right. The one thing that I remember particularly liking about NASCAR cards, especially from this era, was a lot of the photos that you'd get from the races would just be kind of alternate inside shots. Look at that. Barry Dodson just carrying the jack around. They didn't wear any safety equipment other than knee pads back then. And then with fires happening and people getting hit by cars, now the people are dressed in safety equipment. They have helmets, they have full-on fire suits, so they're a lot safer. Like Morgan Shepherd just hanging out on his bicycle and his cruiser. Actually, is that a bicycle? No, it's probably a Harley. Let's see. Texas Pete Sauce Ford. Rebuilt motorbike engine over 13. Rebuilt 1937 car engine. Taught himself to drive. Yeah, Morgan Shepherd. Sam Bass, the artist in NASCAR. I mean, they just have significant depth of catalog as far as their photographs go. Just getting all the different series, the Busch Grand National, I think they're ARCA, Dick Trickle, the White Knight. That's a very unfortunate story. If you don't know about Dick Trickle, I recommend doing a YouTube search or Googling. They have specials on him, and he ended up committing suicide, unfortunately. I believe he was having a lot of depression and psychological issues, and he ended up taking his own life, which was really sad, but he was such a fantastic local track driver, I think ASA driver, all those kinds of different series that he just dominated. He was by far one of the most winningest drivers in those series, and he came over to the Cup Series and just either couldn't get in the equipment that he needed or just had, opportunity just eluded him in one way or the other. That is an interesting race. That's Talladega 1991. Rick Mast flipped over in the tri-oval and slid on his roof for, I don't know, hundreds if not thousands of feet. Now Jarrett. There's something really special about listening to the old NASCAR races as well, or watching the NASCAR races, because of the commentators. I mean, today Jeff Gordon and Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Steve Letarte and Larry McReynolds and all those people, they all were in the business, in the 90s and in the 2000s. But there's just something about having those original NASCAR drivers calling the races. There's something very calming about them, and very, I don't know, I can't quite put my finger on it, but it was just really special. It seemed like you were listening to like an elder relative tell you a story, as opposed to kind of the higher octaves and higher cadences that the current announcers have. Richard Petty with Linda Petty. There, that's a great card to have. Yeah, it's off-center just a little bit to the right. Bobby Allison, 1988. If you don't know much about Bobby Allison, part of the Alabama gang, brother of Donnie, 1979 Daytona 500. If you aren't familiar with that race, I recommend checking it out. At least like a clip on YouTube that shows the last couple of laps, because Cale Yarborough and Donnie Allison, Bobby's brother, my alarm went off again. They end up crashing, and Bobby gets involved and all that stuff. It's a classic. Also, he's the father of Clifford and Davey Allison. Davey was my favorite driver. Unfortunately, like I said, he passed away in 1993. Neil Bonnett, another member of the Alabama gang, passed away in 1994. He was an announcer. He was really special in a very similar looking, at least initially, or it was pretty much the same place that Rick Mast Skull car flipped over on its lid. He flipped over in 1993 when he did a one-race deal with Richard Childress Racing, and then number 31, Mom and Pop Goodwrench Chevrolet. He flipped over, hit the fence, tore the fence down. They red flagged the race for a while, and then he went right back up and called the race because he was an announcer. Morgan Shepherd, Roger Penske, Waddell Wilson, Richard Petty. If you have the opportunity to, I recommend buying an old box of, say, 1991 Max. If you can't find a Traks box, buy a box of 1991 Max. They're fairly inexpensive, maybe $10-15 on eBay, Ernie Irvin. And you'll be able to just walk down memory lane through NASCAR, because these sets used to be like the baseball card sets. Baseball card sets are like 600, 700 cards, even 800 sometimes, but these were about as deep as you could get them, and there's a lot of great photography, interesting behind-the-scenes moments, and I just recommend checking them out. Steve Meal, he was the crew chief for Mark Martin, Jack Roush's car. And Mark Martin, Dale Jr. Download, they just released episode 2 of Mark Martin's interview, and he's a really interesting and great. There's Dale Jarrett's Busch Grand National car. A really great, Mark Martin. He has a really great story, especially because he started racing in NASCAR in the early 80s, I think 1982, and he ended up failing, having to sell all of his equipment just to pay off his debts because one of his sponsors didn't pay, and he had to start all over from scratch. And he really didn't get back into racing until he started with Jack Roush, I believe in 87, 88, for the Stroh's number 6 car. And then in 1990, there's a very interesting story about, he was in the points lead for a significant part of the season, and there's Darrell Waltrip, announcer on Fox. He actually just retired, but he's actually part of the broadcast tonight for the 2020 All-Star race. But, what was I saying? I can't remember. Joey Knuckles, one of Davey Allison's best friends. He was Davey Allison's crew chief, 87, maybe even 88. And then he was a crew member after Robert Yates bought the team from Rainier Lundy. A good follow on social media is, if you're into NASCAR, is Lauren Rainier. He is the son of, oh my goodness, Lauren Rainier. Oh my goodness, his Lauren's father's name is escaping me, but he was the owner of Davey Allison's car. And Lauren has just been huge contributor to the sport of NASCAR. Spots, he's kind of like a scout. Very just lives the NASCAR life. Has his hand in all the different cookie jars. Knows everybody. Lauren Rainier. I know it's JT Lundy. Lauren Rainier. Richard Rainier? Come on. Sarah, can you do a Google search for me for a second?
Sure.
Can you just type in Rainier?
That's it?
Yeah, Rainier Lundy.
Lundy?
Yeah, Rainier, and then the next word is Lundy. Lundy. Richard Rainier? Howard Rainier?
Rainier Racing.
Yeah.
Owner Lauren Rainier.
Yeah. Owner Lauren Rainier. So it's Lauren Rainier. Okay. I see that. Yeah, Lauren Rainier. Okay. JD Stacy, JT Lundy. Harry Rainier. Okay, so it was Harry. Thanks, Burger. So Lauren Rainier and Harry Rainier. Okay, so Lauren is Harry's son. Harry unfortunately passed away, and I apologize for his first name escaping me. He was so important to the sport. All right. Doesn't take long to just rifle through these. Back then, they didn't have any inserts. No gold foils, no parallels, nothing like that. The only thing you're looking for is an autograph card in this box. Say you just wanted to buy a set of 1992 Max, or sorry, 1992 Traks. You could probably pick one up for about $5, maybe $10. So they're not all that expensive, but they're definitely worth. If you have any interest in NASCAR cards or just learning the history of NASCAR, they're worth grabbing because it's an important set. And I believe Press Pass purchased the name Traks, and in the early 2000s, they started releasing a lower end product with the name Traks, which I believe is what Panini has right now with the Donruss Racing. There we go. Second year Jeff Gordon card. That one's actually in really good shape. Might be off center slightly to the right, but the corners are really nice. Small ding in the top right. Set that one aside. My initial thought for these cards, these boxes that I bought, was to do breaks with them and sell spots for the autograph cards, for the 9 different autograph cards. But I just couldn't do it because the factory seal wasn't correct. And if we pull an autograph card out of here, maybe it was correct. There we go, there's the man, Rick Hendrick. Top of that pack was open. I don't think that was necessarily searched or anything. Sometimes that happened. Could have been a factory issue. Dale Earnhardt off-centered significantly to the right. Another alarm. It would be interesting to see some variation card in here. Maybe even if it was just off-cut. You know, if it just had half of, or at least part of another card showing, so the sheet was off-centered or something, but I've never seen anything like that in this series. Everything's been pretty well centered, cut pretty well. Getting down to the end. Let's see, we got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 packs left, so we opened 21. Appreciate you guys watching. I've opened a few other boxes on my channel. You can check those out. Specifically, 1996 Press Pass Premium. I ended up pulling a rubber card out of one of those boxes, which was the first set of cards that I just went insane for. That's actually really good shape. Nice center. Set that one there. And I have some other boxes as well that I've just been kind of holding on to that I'll open at some point or offer for sale. Rusty Wallace. Story about Rusty Wallace. He, at the first race I went to, which was 1993 Winston 500 at Talladega, they did a 2 or 3 lap shootout because the race was caution. There was a caution thrown towards the end of the race for rain. And they did a 3-lap shootout, which I believe was the reason that started the green-white checker format that they have, because you essentially have a 3-lap shootout, and it causes, you know, a lot of pandemonium and chaos. It's really exciting. And he ended up flipping over, not right in front of us, but just in front of us, just down the track a little bit. He got clipped by Dale Earnhardt, and so he was on my radar as being one of my favorite drivers, and he was always a hard guy to get an autograph from because his autograph lines were extremely long. And 2-in-1 pack, I would have went nuts for this pack in the 90s. But unfortunately, when I got to meet him at an autograph session in 1994 when he switched over to Ford, they did an autograph session at Ford World Headquarters, and it's called Driver Appreciation. And they would sit and they would sign autographs for a couple hours, and everything was free. They had all these posters with multiple cars on them, and you could have them sign whatever you wanted. And I walked up with a 1993 Max Premier Plus card, which is similar to what a Topps Finest card would look like, or kind of like a Prism card if you buy Panini now. And the cards autograph really well because the Sharpie wouldn't beat up. Sometimes with these coatings, the marker ink would actually beat up and you wouldn't be able to see. When I say beat up, I mean it would, you know, the little droplets would separate from the card and they would make the autograph look real spotty. So anyway, I had a paint pen and I thought it was going to look awesome because Miller Lite or Miller Genuine Draft wasn't able to be printed on the Max cards for one reason or another. I'm not sure if it was an advertising thing where that company didn't want to advertise beer, or if it was just Miller Genuine Draft didn't want to pay or didn't want to release the rights. So they airbrushed that out on his suit, and I thought it would look awesome if on the black suit if he signed it in silver paint pen. And I don't know if you know how a paint pen works, but it's like a little felt tip that goes inside of the pen cavity, and the paint, when you push in, the paint gets distributed to the felt tip, and it saturates it, so then you can have ink on the felt tip, and then you can sign. Well, Rusty got pissed off when I asked him. I'm like 11 years old, or 12, and he got pissed off, and he threw his Sharpie down, and he took the paint pen and just jammed it on the card, and it just evacuated a huge stream of just ink all across the card, and he rubbed his signature in. You couldn't read it at all, and then he just kind of like tossed the card down on the table. Didn't look at me, didn't do anything. And that was so disheartening to me as a little kid. I just dropped the card on the ground in front of him and walked away. And yeah, so that was my experience with Rusty Wallace. And I say that if I was able to meet him or see him or anything like that, I mean, I would hope I'd be able to get another autograph. Two. And that looks like it's in really good shape. Maybe slightly off-centered to the right. Jeff Gordon, second year card. Last pack coming up. I wasn't expecting to get an autograph in here. Like I said, that would be awesome. We're looking for Jeff Gordon, our Dale Earnhardt, Senior Richard Petty dual autograph. Alan Quickie, Ricky Rudd. Womp womp. No autograph. Alright. Well, 1992 Traks. It's a fun box to open. I recommend, if you can get a box that does have the factory seal with the Traks on it, I would recommend picking it up and just seeing if you might pull something, or just having it in your collection, because they don't really sell for all that much at the moment. Maybe they'll go up at some point, maybe even after this video. Maybe it'll go viral. That would be pretty great. But yeah, it was fun. I'm going to go back to watching the 2020 All-Star race at Bristol. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked the video, comment, subscribe, hit the thumbs up. I look forward to hearing from you guys. Thanks.